With World Gin Day upon us, it's time to celebrate the only decent spirit that the English have contributed to the bar shelf behind me, that juniper-infused elixir of life, gin, with the appropriately named cocktail, London Calling. This drink was invented by a bartender named Chris Jepson for a cocktail competition in 2002. So it doesn't have quite the rich history that some other cocktails do, but it has quickly become a modern classic because of how delicious and complex it is. Of course, gin plays a massive part in that, and so does the dry sherry. Sherry fell out of fashion for a while, but has been rediscovered by bartenders recently, which obviously, running a Spanish bar, I am very happy about. So the hero of this cocktail, appropriately for World Gin Day, is our gin. It's always difficult to know which gin to choose for cocktails, and each cocktail will lend itself to a different style. This one, because we really want the gin to shine through, it's good to use what's known as a navy strength gin. This just means that it has a higher alcohol content than your regular gins, and the name comes from back in the day when the Navy would have gin rations aboard the ship. They would be worried about them leaking onto the gunpowder, and also probably a bit more worried about whether or not their gin was weaker than they wanted it to be. So they would mix the gin with some gunpowder and set it on fire. It had to be a certain alcohol level for the gunpowder to still light, and that's how they knew that the naughty distillers weren't giving them weaker gin than they'd asked for. So navy strength doesn't really denote a particular flavour profile, but what it does mean with that higher alcohol content is that whatever botanicals are used in the gin are really amplified, and the length is amazing and long, and that's why it works so well in the London Calling. The original London Calling recipe was using Beefeater 24, but I've gone for something a bit more local. So this is Never Never. They call it a Southern Strength gin. It sits at 52%, so a good sort of 10 to 12% more than your average gin. And it did just win the best gin in the world, so we can't really go wrong. Otherwise, most navy strength gins will work, or if you can't get your hands on one of those, then just a ballsy London Dry style gin like Tanqueray or Four Pillars would also work. Our next ingredient is sherry. I do have a bit of a thing for sherry, but rest assured this is not the kind of sherry that you would find at the back of your grandma's cupboard. The base wine that makes sherry is actually quite bland, and all of the flavour and complexity comes from the aging process. This one is a Fino sherry, and that means that it's aged entirely under a protective layer of yeast, which is known as flor, and it means that the oxygen doesn't get in to change the flavour of the wine. So you don't get any of those oxidative notes like nuts or raisins or mushrooms. It stays really fresh and clean, citrusy, floral, herbal, mineral. It's amazingly complex, so absolutely lovely to sip by itself, but also an absolute secret weapon for cocktails. This one is Lustau. It's one of the bigger bodegas, so it's not that expensive that you feel bad about using it in a cocktail, but still a really lovely wine. Finally, we'll be adding a couple of dashes of orange bitters. They are a really handy thing to have on your back bar or at home. They lift basically any cocktail from an old fashioned to a martini to something like this, a sour. Fee's is a good brand, so is Reagan's, and they're both pretty easy to get a hold of. To start off with, you want to always have your garnish ready to go before you make the drink so that the drink doesn't end up sitting on the ice once you've shaken it for too long while you're faffing about with peels and things. So you're just gonna get your grapefruit, cut a thin slice of the rind. You can go a little bit thicker if it makes it easier for you to cut it, and then just go back and slice off any of the excess white bit of pith, because that one's quite bitter. Next, we'll squeeze the lemon juice. You want it to be fresh because this is a really nice, light, fresh, zingy cocktail, so you don't want to be using any old citrus in there. And now we can start building the cocktail. You'll need 40 ml of Never Never Southern Strength gin, 15 ml of our freshly squeezed lemon juice, 15 ml of sugar syrup, and 15 ml of Lustau Fino sherry. And finish off with 2 dashes of orange bitters. Next, we'll fill the smaller part of our shaker tin full with ice. You want to be shaking on as much ice as possible so that it's going to be lovely and cold and refreshing. Pop the tins together and shake as hard as you can. When the tin's all nice and frosted and so cold that you can hardly hold it, that's when it's ready. So you just pop it open. Give it a little taste to make sure it's all nicely balanced. Delicious. This is a very elegant and stylish drink, so if you can find yourself a nice coupe, that's how it looks best. Pop your hawthorn strainer in so that holds the ice back, and then pour the drink out through your fine strainer into your chilled coupe. And finally, the last little twist, grab your grapefruit garnish, give it a sharp flick over the top of the glass so that all of the grapefruit oils are getting expressed over the cocktail, and you'll get a really lovely grapefruit aroma when you lift the drink up to your mouth. To place the garnish in the drink, if you can give it a little curl so that it can hook onto the side of the glass and stay there rather than bobbing about in the drink and in your face when you're trying to drink it. So right in time for World Gin Day, a London calling. So now you know. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, give us a like, and why don't you comment below and let us know what you did for World Gin Day or what your favourite gin is. Gin and sherry are a match made in heaven and work in all sorts of styles of cocktail. So if you're not sure about the shaken up sour that we just made, then you could try it in a stirred down martini style drink called the TUXEDO. So you just switch in dry sherry instead of your vermouth, and it adds a really lovely amount of aromatics and savoury notes. Otherwise, if you're not sure that sherry is your thing, although I have no idea why you would feel that way, you could try the White Lady, which is basically the exact same as the London Calling that we just made, but you switch in some triple sec or curacao instead of the sherry, and also add some egg white for a lovely fluffy texture.